we meet on this glorious summer morning, right? And in a slightly different location or basic county council than usual. So if I could commence the meeting, please, and we have what is started.
Chair, apologies for being currently.
And then move on to item 2, declaration of members' interest. And we have the minutes of our previous meeting on the 27th of March 2023. We'll have a proposal secondary close. Okay, so we'll now move on to reviewing the draft statement of accounts for 2023, which we included on page 9 to 260. And we can, obviously, they are one of the reviews that we will do is we will take certain people into and out of the notes, which is previous meetings that we would read from that its conclusion in terms of the financial statements, and then notes that can key financial statements. So, Michelle, would you like
yeah, so just before we head on to the 22-3 accounts, just by way of introduction, I just got to give you an update on the 21-2 accounts. Last time we were at audit committee, the SARs were present, and they were hopeful that they would have the 21-2 accounts signed off in terms of the national issue that had been raised around infrastructure assets. That issue did get resolved, albeit not really to our liking. We were quite confident that we had met the requirements of the code. The auditors were quite nervous about this, and because we couldn't prove categorically that we were complying to the letter of the law of the code, they basically said they wouldn't sign the accounts unless we took the statutory override, which is basically the civil position that basically says you're not meeting the code. So we agreed that we would do that. We were in a position to get the account signed, and then a national issue was raised again by another set of accountants around the pension triennial review of pension liability in the accounts. And the National Audit Office have come back with a view on how we deal with that. We've got some updated reports and information for the SARs. They're just reviewing that information for us. We've just got to check whether it reaches any of our materiality levels for adjusting the accounts. But the SARs are hopeful that we should have that issue resolved and the accounts signed off by the end of July. So not a great position to be in. The stats at the end of March were that only, I think about 75% of the 21-2 accounts were still outstanding, which is about 350 local authorities that still haven't been accounts signed off. So we're in no way in an isolated position. And I think the whole issue around the sign-off accounts is making its way over the political agenda, particularly with LGA and doing it. So a bit of a watch this space, but hopefully we should have that issue resolved soon. And so in terms of 22-3 accounts, we published them on the 9th of June, which was 9 days after the statutory deadline. We've had some challenges, I think, during this year, would be safe to say. Ongoing issues with the 21-2 accounts, and also the move to the BW ERP system and the downtime and the extra kind of involvement of our team in that. But hopefully, what you've got is a quality document in front of you, given the position of the financial position for the authority for 22-3. The accounts obviously also include the pension fund accounts and the fire rescue accounts that have been included. And the narrative report sets out the kind of overview of the position for the council. I think just what's come on the back of that, just to mention to committee, is that last week we got published the latest Ofsted rating for Ofsted came and did an inspection of children's services, and that's been published as an outstanding judgment as well, which is really good. In terms of financial resilience, I think we have included a bit in there about the financial resilience index. We continue to have a positive base on that. And also we've referenced in the report, the narrative report, that we have had Grant Thornton in to do a complete review of our financial resilience and our compliance with the financial management code. They've come back and said that we're compliant in terms of respect to the nature of the code, compliant with all of the 17 standards. They've recommended a couple of areas where improvements can be made. But they will join us for the audit committee in July. I think the committee a bit more detail around the feedback on that, but a good outcome for us as well. In terms of the outturn position for the council for 22-3, the review of the financial performance of the council for 22-3 will be reported into scrutiny on the 29th of June, and then following on to that to exec and to council in September. We are reporting and spend on both our revenue and capital budget. Given the financial context for the year, the rise in inflation, additional costs, particularly around pay, contracts and energy, I think that's a good position for us to be in. We did increase our contingency when we set the budget for 22-3 in anticipation of some unplanned pressures in our budgets, particularly around inflation. We set the budget at 6.5, it got raised to 8.2 with the carry forward from 2022, and all of that was used. So all of it was used to offset pressures in our service budgets that we haven't budgeted for. So a good decision was made. And in terms of the accounts, the main statement set out the position for the council. A couple of the largest movements are around balance sheets, so they're not actual cash movements, but the valuation of assets and liabilities in our balance sheet. With the largest movement being around pension liability. We seem to have this conversation every year. It's the valuation of the liabilities and assets around the pension and the performance to support their pension payments. And there's a reduction in liability there of 728 million this year, which is the biggest shift in the council. There's a small reduction in the use of usable reserves, which will be just going down grants. The financial volatility reserve hasn't been used at all, and needs to be there to support future challenges and emerging problems. So I'm not planning to pick up on anything else and just really hand over to committee for any questions.
Thank you, Michelle. And I think we would like, obviously, as Michelle has reiterated, the progress in the 21-22 accounts is a very technical issue regarding the valuation of infrastructure assets and some issues from pension fund, mainly the infrastructure assets. It's a national debate, if you will, with many authorities, most of them in fact, and it will tend to move into our highways valuations. So it doesn't affect the day-to-day accounts at all. And Michelle, I wonder if we can anticipate those sort of issues on the 22-23 account, or do we hope there will be some decisions made at a higher level, perhaps that this can be drawn from place?
I think you recall audit committee asking me that before when I don't think it's hard to anticipate these things. You just have a single auditor somewhere in the whole midst of external auditors find something and suddenly everything becomes a bit of an issue. I think the challenge continues that the external audit firms are really working to the letter of the law in the code, because they are seeing fines from the FRC if things come through that demonstrate that they're not working to that. And it's counter to the National Audit Office recommendations and guidance at the moment as well, which is a bit bonkers is the only word we've used to describe it. I think it's being pushed up the agenda politically, and I think that's because there are so many sets of accounts now that are outstanding. It does bring into question the whole assurance around some of the liabilities, some of the districts and counties accounts. I think the Section 114 notice issued a couple of weeks ago by Woking hasn't helped with that position. The auditors are focusing on the wrong thing. They know they're focusing on the wrong thing, and they're doing it because they're obliged to. So yeah, I think it's being pushed up the agenda. I think LGA do have very discussions around it. It's being pushed up to the political agenda there. But it's about have the code in place, and the code is there And if you're a company that's for sale, then they're absolutely important things to be looking at on your balance sheet. But to taxpayers and local residents, they're of no consequence at all. So, and again, as we allude to, a real detail, they are prepared with the international accounting standards in mind. And again, as I'm not trading limited forms on very, very limited forms on figures in that, then really applied was just a comparison. Yeah, and you know, our road infrastructure isn't for sale as far as I'm aware. It's an asset to our balance sheet. How we depreciate and value that depends on the type, nature of it, and I think that's what's been more challenging around the infrastructure assets. And so share that depreciation policy with me, and there's about 10 different areas of depreciation based on whether it's surface dressing, potholes, construction, so valuing that new balance sheet to the, as accurately as we've been able to is quite challenging. I think what we do is their representation. It's just what is
Can I just add as well? So, as about given this the deadline will be by a smidgen, I was asked by SIPFA to provide a brief statement about the reasons why I think set that out. The reason why we missed this deadline, but I think one of the points we're really keen to make was it's completely arbitrary that we get called to up by something else that happens somewhere else in the country. Accounts happen to have been signed off the day before that happened. Just wait and roll on to next year. And that is a message that we are trying to feed back through the Treasury Societies, is that it is pretty arbitrary nature. And I remember when Louise Ainsley's the Treasurer at Suffolk mentioned this on the call, like Art Sand, because you could just see, it's going to come, our accounts went signed off, and lo and behold, within a week we heard from our own auditors that, it's going to go through some more work. So it really is what it is now. I think it's the challenging part, albeit as Treasury groups who are trying really hard to feed those messages in.
Doing when the auditors finally sign off those accounts, they've got to take a bit of a post balance sheet review of what's.
I think the challenge is the longer you leave the accounts open, the more likely you are to have that could affect your what you're including. They are meant to be just a kind of snapshot.
Yeah, they are, and really the key is the governance and insurance on a day-to-day basis that you find, I'm sure. Or controls that are in place, and that's true. As we said before, it's looking at some processes of general financial management. That is the answer, absolutely.
I think some of the things that hit the headlines, like the investment losses and things, are a symptom. They're not cause. The cause is poor governance or poor finance, poor decision making, full transparency. And we tend to say we were at SC last week with the commissioners for both Warwick and working on message from the top.
So move on to we'd like to sort of address issues in the narrative first and then look at more of the detail, Andrew.
Well, it's just a general observation, Chair. And as the most independent member of this committee, it probably gives me license to say this. We've had an hour's workshop where we did dive onto the draft accounts, and it's the absence of excitement and the absence of concerns that is most notable, really. But that is a wonderful place to be in local government finances, which pays tribute to the sound leadership governance decisions by the members, advised by the officers, and then development that's going, and the launch is constantly moving around. But we are here with a very comforting and assuring set of accounts, which many authorities would give their IP for, and that warrants tribute to everybody who has had a part in them. all along the line of making the right decisions, the service decisions, delivering the services, and then making sure the financial rules are observed. So, I'm more impressed.
I would just like to agree. Very important. Yeah. So, where we are, which is the as comfortable as we can be at the moment, within all the other issues. Maybe go about our business. These are the drafts. This is a draft report. It has to go to the external auditor. I think the intention is to bring it back to the committee. Are we likely to see any issues associated with delivering our timescale with the external auditor? And as the external auditor, it's sort of been in touch with us as we develop the draft reports, and also what goes to ensure that it's not going to surprise and any issues in terms of their response.
So, Mazars are in touch with us quite a lot. Had an update with them last week, and I know the team speaks to them more regularly as well. Their plan, I think they set out their plan when they came to March committee, and they'd already forewarned us that we're going to start this work in July. And although the reporting deadline is September, they've already told us that they weren't planning to finish that work until December. So we know that they're not planning to be finish the work until after the statutory reporting deadline. We knew that when they came to the March committee. I think we're in a better place than some. I think some authorities that were mentioning SCT call on Friday, the audit isn't starting until November. They're still committed to do that work. They'll likely spend some time in July trying to completion the 21-2 accounts. I don't anticipate there being major changes in the accounts from the draft to the final. It's certainly not indicated that they're looking at anything in particular. We give them quite a lot of information. They do quite a lot of pre-work, don't they? So we've already given them quite a lot. They've got draft accounts. I can't promise you that there won't be anything that they'll find that they don't come back to us with, because the state is, you know, there's a bit of dread when you hear one of your colleagues say, yeah, I need to ask about this, but and you know, but the plan is at the moment that they will work from July.
Once we're in a far better position, many of the authorities, and probably, you know, are very committed from the side. It does seem to be a mess, to be honest. And if anybody, you know, who is very external to the whole system, is looking at the website, our website, any other website that's got to see all these comments great. They may well be very duly concerned, you know, that local governments, sector as well, probably, are having a great deal of problem getting accounts ratified and sorted out, and that is because of fundamental issues with the way that we go business, rather than these sort of side issues which seem to be thrown at us time and time again, for whatever reason, which fundamentally don't really add any value to the process and just cause us to get this sort of almost bad publicity.
Absolutely,
And what do we do about that? Because, you know, either deadlines need to change, or guidance needs to change, or the or the auditors need to be told, you know, to get on to do the job in the guidance that exists, rather than trying to get their bounds.
Absolutely, I think we're influencing through professional networks, through SCT, and all of the local authorities that are influencing through their bodies. SIT for close consultation, I think last week. They're consulting with us constantly around the accounts. I think that the LGA representative last week was talking about their political relay getting involved, and it's very much on the politics agenda. I think it's just a matter of the professional bodies sitting down and working our way through the things that we could be doing something that's slightly bit different to the private sector. Until that's reached, then we're always going to be in this issue. I think if the government's got a requirement to produce whole of government accounts, that they require audited accounts, and I don't think we like it going, but obviously that's a real issue, and you know, it's not flagging early enough the issues of this, that, working. So the auditors, you know, their balance sheet might look great, but in terms of valuation, but obviously their financial resilience isn't being pushed out through those coming in. I think all we can do is continue to feedback and influence where we can. But it's a topic of discussion for all of our professional bodies very much. The first topic of discussion of the Society of County Treasurers. I was at a call on Friday, the week before conversation. And you know, it's really difficult because we had a representation from Grant Thornton, equivalent head, at the meeting on Friday. The National Audit Office have issued some guidance to say to auditors, please be sensible about pensions liability. Obviously, for the people that can find the auditors have said, no, that's not okay. So Grant Thornton are just sticking their ends in. We go around the road. So government recognises that something fundamentally needs to change, and that was the feedback from civil services.
Everything else recognises needed fundamental change. We never get around to it properly. Unfortunately, I think that's why it's so important, Chairman, that this committee says that we are attending that.
Absolutely, I think
Just a matter of emphasis to what you mentioned the FRC again. So they've just appointed a national director for local audit, and I think it's important to see how if that hasn't changed, well, it'll be auditors get messages back, but no, FRC says this, so there does need to be a change. It is predominantly related to financial reporting issues as a result of IFRS. So yeah, let's keep a close eye on it. We will do as much as we can to feed into all those discussions.
Thank you. Yeah, a lot of it's been picked up, but I quite agree. You do need a system that's fit for purpose, and you can be busy as you like, jumping through the hoops. If the hoops are the wrong hoops, it does make it rather difficult. I was going to just move on to the capital gross program actor position, because there's a lot of underspends in there, and from my point of view, decent accounts organisation working with the various sectors of that organisation, provide guidance to where they are, etc. But what we seem to have here is quite a lot of slippage. To me, having run a few projects here and there, slippage equates to cost escalation. I'm just seeking some assurances that we have methods to control and also work with, because sometimes finance can be limited if it hasn't got the entrepreneurial bit with the rest. So you can actually penny pinching, roll things down to half a penny, and that's not actually what's required. You need to be looking at the future to make things happen as well. So just looking for reassurance regarding it's not going to be an overspend in the future. I know it's going to be difficult because six numbers on the lottery might be easier because of wages, fuel, etc. But from the figures, I'm seeking assurance. Thank you.
Yeah, so absolutely understand the comments. We've underspent the capital programme this year just by just under 50 million. A large underspending there is the one specific scheme, so Grantham Southern Relief Road was 19 billion of that, and absolutely recognise that slippage can cause costs. Then there has been some technical issues with that scheme around the design, which has delayed the project, which I think has been in the press. We reset some of the budgets for these major schemes when we set the budget for 23-4, recognising that the slippage would cause some delayed costs, and there's also some feedback of some technical fees and things through insurance. So the spend might come down if that's the case. I think the other thing to mention is a large underspend is around the corporate contingency that's in there. So we keep a contingency to deal with things like any cost increases, but also any new projects or schemes that come along we haven't budgeted for. So that's quite generous at the minute. We've got an underspend there of around 18 billion. So we are constantly looking at schemes. Some of the budgets have gone up. As I say, when we set the budget for 23-4, what we've done in previous years, as well as maybe split some of the projects that haven't started to make sure we don't exceed our spending envelope. But that's kind of under constant review. I think with schemes like Grantham, it's really hard to forecast exact time profile of spend. And it, you know, a technical issue like that has just caused a large delay. I think highways asset protection is interesting because that's actually overspent. And the report will show that that's overspent by about 11 billion. The highways maintenance team only programme their work to allow for poor weather, and we've not had any this year, so they've over-delivered their programme. Absolutely understand your challenge, your question, but the assurance I can give you is that that's got contingency in the programme to help deal with that when we have reset budgets where we know those costs are.
I'll certainly put assurances it's in the safe bet, so thank you.
Thank you. In reading the narrative and the accounts, it's clear that obviously we are using more money coming in from local areas rather than government, central government funding, council tax and so on. And really, on the report, we talk about that, but is there any assurance that the level of council tax being collected is not going to be seriously affected or got anything in there to make sure that if the current financial situation means that council tax doesn't come through as much as it is, that we've got a way forward?
So when we set our budget each year, we get information from the districts about their collection fund assumptions. So they don't assume they're going to collect 100%, they allow for a percentage of non-collection, and we base our budget on that. We're quite prudent about how we set our budgets based on the collection funds. Offsetting non-collection, of course, is growth in tax base, so more houses in Lincolnshire means more collection anyway. So this last year we've had surpluses on the collection fund around council tax, so which was obviously positions during COVID, and we've been allowed to kind of account for that. I think the local districts have funds that they can support people with, and that's been really helpful with that. So I don't think we're at risk. We're in constant contact with the section 151 the districts. The Regs and Ben's office has given an update to us on where we are with collection funds. In terms of business rates, quite a lot of government intervention has been put in to support businesses over the last couple of years, and we've been compensated with to backfill reduction in business rates. So I think we're quite prudent setting our assumptions. The districts are as well. We monitor it, so I don't think it's always a risk, but I don't think it's a risk.
As interest rates are going up or appear to be going up, obviously clearly that's going to affect households and businesses. Small businesses, which I suspect is more in Lincolnshire than in some areas. Is advice given on that down to the district to help in their success? So we're a part of the business rates. In terms of business rates, we're part of the business rates pool. So with the 7 districts, so any growth in business rates, we will benefit from. And we seek advice every year about the local tax position in terms of business and the risk that presents to us. So we get professional advice to all the section 151s across the county around the risk profile, business rates, tax base. And in terms of council tax, I think rising costs are always a challenge, and you know, council tax might not be the first bill to pay, but as I say, we've been fairly resilient through the last few years around that, so hopefully maybe in a year or so, but we'll just watch this carefully as see how resilience is not damage that, I think, and say we've been prudently in that.
Just as an addendum, shall we? Historically, it's maybe an exception because of the housing code potentially service on collection. Because obviously when the district kept it and the city kept it, just make an estimate of the average number of housing. It's never exact. Got educated. And yeah, we have to be mindful of the fact we could be looking at things on the collection from the block.
Yeah, so we did have some deficits following COVID, and they didn't put in some specific accounting for them.
Yeah.
That could be spread over a number of years, and also we really hit councils particularly in the year. I don't think we cash. At the beginning of COVID, I was having like weekly calls with the districts because they were concerned about their cash flow, about the actual collection of cash. That kind of stopped down quite quickly, become a bit of a non-issue after that quite quickly. So, you know, I think if it becomes a problem for a lot of councils, then there'll be an issue about, you know, how they think.
I think that was when if it was going to becomes an issue quite quickly, we're going to see action on it.
Yes.
And acknowledgement of that quite early on.
Yeah, so the districts have to submit 2 or 3 times a year, I think, the information back to government on the council tax base and the domestic rates, and we get to see those. And we've put some models in place now to keep better track of that. I think got a new starter in finance teams, come from North Links, that's the billing authority as well as the unitary authority. So we've put some tools in place to help us better monitor.
Just actually, brilliant point that is. I picked up Step Up to Social Work, and I noted amongst this another 15 apprentices. I was just going to ask, growing your own is quite a good subject to stop shortages. Is this method being worked across the whole council?
I think it's been focused on the areas of particular concern, so children's social care particularly have been supported by the council to put quite a large number of apprenticeship places in, and they've been working with the university to develop that programme. Shortage in staff is more apparent than some areas in others, social care being a particular area of concern. So it's not an initiative that's being applied across the entire council. I think we have apprentices in our own team. They don't always look like what you'd expect. So Hannah, who's busy doing our treasury at the moment, who's fundamental part of putting the accounts together, is our first apprentice. She was in a substantive role. She's done that apprenticeship while she's been working in a substantive role. She's now our strategic finance lead. She's not really. Nikki's part of the team as well. She's new, and she's also studying through an accounting apprenticeship. So we've got, you know, substantive roles where we. But I think it's different than another.
It's just to add to we're our highest ever usage of the apprenticeship levy since it came in, which is really, really positive. So it means we are at the highest role we've had since 2017. So the key fact that it came out as most recent overview scrutiny was we've retained 80% of the apprentices that we've taken on since 2017, which is brilliant in terms of, you know, proving that growing your own approach. So yeah, really positive.
Thank you very much. I mean, obviously that Chris. Can I just roll on to? I was going to ask another question again about our 5 subsidiary companies that we own and basically the health of those.
So what are the 5 Transport Connect are the ones that are maybe operational. There's 3 that aren't actually operating in there. 2. If you can give it a bit of those, but two legal services have been constituted and it's got its license now, but just wait to start trading. The 2 of them were set up before some of the rules changed around commercial activities. They're kind of pending, but not trading. Transport Connect, they are operating well, from what I understand. They're reporting to scrutiny, highway scrutiny regularly. We monitor their accounts. They have accounts. They provide us regularly, and we have oversight of those. Also, they were set up not to be commercial, and they weren't set up as a commercial income. They were set up as market supply. So we took over that company when the incumbent gave notice down in Brampton, because otherwise we would have had a way to get kids to school down there. So, but they've got loans with us that were agreed when the company was bought by us, and they've never missed any payments around those loans, which is the key thing for us, that they continue to repay any borrowing from us that's agreed with the executive at the time.
I think that's a real good example of a company that's delivering for the community, both roughly it's no cost other than what their running costs are.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Question.
Okay, obviously one of the, so obviously one of the companies that actually could be partnership involved in management board of that. That is a child protection organisation, which again isn't a limited company, it's a partnership that's been run in 1974, changed a lot since then. Very commercially driven, like I say, very well managed, and long may that remains so. And generating a surplus between organisations as they go. So that is a very successful delivery that involved in over the years, and essentially change in terms of its own governance and things quite radically over the last few years.
So there are a couple of areas where we are part owners of things. So EFCO is one. People obviously we've got an interest in now as the owner of our ERP, our finance and HR system. So we do have some interest in those, but that's so generally providing services back to the local.
Following the apprenticeship question, very assuring, and I'm like a fan of apprenticeships, great news. But later we're going to hear from an internal audit that we're not maximising our use of apprenticeship levy. More.
Well, I guess you can always do more until you fully utilise the levy. We've come on great strides, I guess, in the last 3 years in terms of maximising opportunities to do it. So yeah, we can do more, and we will continue to seek to do more as part of that.
What's coming to you're making positive policy noises about quality staff and retention of them, with 80% retention is extremely good.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would urge you to seek to get to the maximum.
So obviously we've looked at the financial resilience, which is really, really important. Expand the next of that in the narrative, given this detail that sort of the portion of funding kept locally and the grant situations. Well, in terms of the key documents that we create on as well as the comprehensive expenditure account, and Michelle has referred to earlier, we've got a very, looks like a very large service station, 23 million. The often of that table on page 40, but 742 million of that is the uplift on the evaluation, and that is, it is a paper amount, that isn't a usable amount. John, it can, that goes up and down, and we have it go the other way sometimes.
Yeah, so the comprehensive input expenditure account contains entries that are cashable entries, so don't affect the cash within the council. So it includes things like depreciation and revaluations. And revaluations really apply to things like the pension funds, so the assets and liabilities around the pensioners in the pension fund and future liabilities around the assets that it holds to pay those. And there have been some changes in that this year, some decrease in the asset valuation, there's some decrease in the liabilities in terms of life expectancy. So we do find that is generally the figure that makes quite a big difference each year and swings around a bit. Also our property PPE evaluations value our property assets. You don't actually realise that asset until you come to dispose of it. So whilst we change the value in our balance sheet, we have to put that change on. It's not a cash value that you can hold on to deliver the services. Then that's the cash only comes to fruition when disposing of so and that kind of is reflected in the reserve statement. The difference between the usable and the usable reserve. In non-revaluation, that's the pension scheme related thing from 30 should again go back to trying to be prudent on the budget as well, and always the movement reserve statement is on page 41 of the pack. The usable reserves has moved from 332 million to 323 million, and that's in the use of reserves for service deliveries and the volatility reserve has remained static for it sounds 46 million, yes, that would send me. Yeah, and I'm just referred to that's as well, is the person about future funding from central government. Any issues. And you know, the county council has always thought it prudent to keep that financial volatility actual volatility balance in place, because at the end of the day, it sounds like it's money, but you know, there's an awful lot of out there. Yeah, so it's about maintaining the good. Yeah, so the justification for that was if we do have a reduction in our income and our funding, we need to reduce and make changes to our service structure, then it gives you some time. Yeah, it needs to do it in an organised and coherent manner.
How long the 48 million housekeepers going into some substantial loss in our income from ratepayers?
The rationale is to last over the period of financial plan, which is usually about.
That's based on, I mean, we've talked about it, we have talked about this, but that's based on the situation.
It's based on a lot of assumptions.
I don't, the concern I've got is that the economy is going, in a really bad way. And what is normal may not be normal by any means at all. I just wonder whether you thought about doing a sensitivity testing to see exactly how low 48 million pounds would go if our income, because of ratepayers not being able to pay the rates, goes from 3% to 20%, so something like that.
So when we set our budget, we do a bit of that in there, but we're looking to do a bit more. I think given the position rates there. Yeah.
I think the warning on the horizon is that the last spending review last autumn essentially said there will be a change in government. That's the big election for January 2025, but all technical departments should be expecting to see a 3.2%, which I would expect to see that revenue support figure most likely. That was before changes in interest rates and things that we've seen a lot of press over the last week as the markets are reacting to changes in inflation.
It's not just that, it's a combination of things.
Absolutely, I think the impact on government borrowing is going to be quite large.
It's heating costs going up £1,000, mortgages going up £3,000, your food bill going up £1,000, which is has customer impacts in Lincolnshire where average wage is not that high.
Absolutely not. I think that going back to that spending review forecast, that was predicated on interest rates being back down around about 3% by 25, 26. Based on that, it's looking dicey to say the least.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned fair funding review as well. I think the messages we got from big officials is that will be rebranded. It's needs and distribution, but it is in the long grass at the moment. So even with a change in government, we can expect to see it in 2025, in 26, 27. So a long way around.
And the issue also following on from the fact that, you've had that there may be a pressure on central government to keep a cap on the rising council tax as well. Not that we would want to see that, but I mean, really from both ends, there's only part of the decisions we make.
It's a tool that they've got at their disposal to manage the inflation and some things, and they don't need to do much in the way of legislation for it. They can just be announced as part of the annual. Yeah.
So we are, I think that's some watching group that we'll be keeping an eye on.
That's sensitive.
Yeah.
So also, how far 48 million pound goes.
Yeah, okay. And just as obviously we've got only speaking management board meeting on the 29th, and they are going to look at.
They will look at the active position
So it's actually and OSB a month in that, yes, on a daily basis. So that's useful. I think Carol Street does that also. I will there on a constant basis. And just before we move on, I'm going to think it has that asked a few questions. So, are we matching spending on capital with comparable income flows? And he also raised some issues about the debt interest or interest rates as well. So, are we putting a mismatch on those two with emergency revenue spending in capital? Obviously, the executives.
So I think this is in response to the comment in the accounts about internal borrowing.
Yeah.
So our usual policy would be we identify the capital programme, we understand how much money we need to pay for the expenditure that's planned in there, and we borrow that from PWL to fund that. And we also have a level of reserves, cash backed, 320 million, and they're in our bank, and we can lend that out as part of our treasury management strategy. What we've done over the last year is recognising the change in interest rates, we've done more internal borrowing. And the actual Prudential Code has introduced this well around councillors holding less cash than they need to, and creates the benchmark approach, which has been built into our treasury strategy, so to try and minimise the amount of cash that we hold. So rather than borrowing ahead of spend, you use your cash. So it's just a bit of a problem here to pay for everything. But I understand the concern then about have you got enough money to pay for your service delivery. I think we've kind of experimenting. We've kind of setting that benchmark level to make sure that we do have that cash ready if we do need to spend it. In terms of emergencies, I mean, the absolute emergency is that you can borrow short term if you've got a cash flow issue, and short term borrowing is something that's part of our strategy anyway. It's sometimes cheaper than cash in your bank to do things. So I think the relevant question, I don't think it's a concern. I think we've kind of set the benchmark to ensure that we've got cash to deliver our services. Short term borrowings, we need to. But it's better than paying high interest rates for money that's sat in the bank at 22%.
Growing as certainly from a private sector perspective, capital key. They can finish like a cash and destroy the otherwise profitable company in fairly short order. I appreciate that's a different scenario.
Yeah, now our income is a little bit more certain than the private sector, so we get regular payments from the districts around our council tax, we get regular grant contributions from government, and that's all planned out for our cash flow analysis.
So those overall reserves and the same, we look at the reserves both usable and we've got a huge amount of money, but that's why they're so important. Yeah, the same 323 cash banked. So so that's quite a lot of capital. And Ian did raise one further point, which we didn't touch on when discussing the audit. Do we get reduction in fee?
No, so in the accounts, it looks like we paid them less this year than last year. They asked us to apply some audit accounting arrangement for their fees for some reason. So when we work on an accruals basis for everything else in the accounts, they ask us to work on a cash basis. I'm quite sure whatever we paid them won't be the last of what we hear from them for this last year for 2022. So I think it is literally a comparison of what we paid in terms of cash. We are getting extra bills each year because of the extra work they're doing around the balance sheet valuations. I expect we'll get the same this year. But so the core fees are set by the national framework that we get. Is any work they charge us. And that has to be approved by.
Which raises just some salaries in the organisation.
I think Ian's raised this in previous years about trying to get ahead of the comms around the salary conversion. I think my general response is no, it's there in the accounts. If people want to ask questions about it, they can.
Yeah.
I think the bandings for the salaries that we have remained static, that we've got to report on for years, and not surprisingly, the number of people rising up into those bandings has increased, the salaries have generally increased with inflation. I think we've had a bit of change of responsibility in our senior leadership team, so that's reflected in some of the salaries there as well. We do have high directors for all, so if you've got specific questions on that, they can ask that. We publish what we have to publish yet. I have some that's in this response to the transparency report.
And I'm just a further question on the counterparties.
Yeah, so we publish where we invest our money as part of the treasury management strategy. We have different levels of counterparties, so AAA, AA, and there's been a bit of a shift, I think, from last year to this. I think it's just about what the lending rates are, the interest rates at the time. We might have historic loans in there. It's not, our treasury strategy has remained the same throughout that period. There's not a change in strategy. We're probably just the answers at the time. It's page 94. The overall figure changed massively. It was just the split between the two. That's it. It just needs to do with. I can get a specific response if that's helpful. Yeah, that's fine.
It was still doing that time depending on both parts. And still once more is what the balance sheet, the figure of net assets at the bottom is a little bit different from the on the other page. We need to make movement on reserves is a bit different than this. Is that not just the rounding? It's just the rounding, isn't it? Do we need to adjust rounding for articles? We usually that's a bit difficult. We can change one. Yeah, we can change them. Yeah, that's what some gets acceptable. We get into this tail spin. We do make a claim at the beginning about there might be. There's always rounding. So I thought that's the question just for clarity, but it is difficult when you've got complicated calculations that we're not putting in money or food in. Yeah. Calculations. So it's just rounding. It is. Let make a bit of a disclaimer at the beginning. Yeah, that's good. Okay. Any further questions?
Any 95 is to do with the long-term debts. Seems to be an increase in length of debts because to a certain extent, 2 months to a year, certainly. What do you think? Is this all care home stuff?
So I don't care is the service debt.
Age of debt and all.
Great debt.
So is this
Bottom page 95.
is this current? No, this now. Oh, right. So yeah, so if it's our LCC debtors, then it is predominantly adult care, but not completely. And I think like a lot of the adult care debts get subject to other kind of scrutiny and papers, and that's obviously been something.
I think that's sort of well understood. If that's what it is, that's
Yes.
point.
Yeah, it is a shift. Longer term debtors only
It's the refinancing sort of thing that's to take place.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's a different
Payments.
Michelle, Michelle Cox, you can update on we're going to actually going to get a grant for and to us we've got to see the draft bill in July meeting, so we can go through the financials and it's on time in back to it.
Yeah, so we brought a paper to audit committee last September around the financial resilience and compliance with the FM code. We had some actions on there. One of those was to commission an external review about compliance and financial resilience, which we've done. Duty are ending virtually, if that's okay.
Yeah. Yes, the big one in council chamber.
So, and they're quite happy to give feedback and we'll obviously update before.
That's people thank you. Pension from the health. Pension.
Apart from the things that have been mentioned in sort of evaluations, so I think, accounts of, I think, they are there.
So the accounts were published on the website of the pension fund. They're following their cycle around value reporting as well, so they'll be back into pension. I think the investment strategies, constant discussion with the committee. And obviously that will feed into the figures, so that's the other thing.
The investment strategy is obviously
No,
gradually move equities into the investment. So they do provide the returns.
they do indeed, yes, but it's risk and return.
They are being accused of being risky person.
The Highlands provide quite a lot of professional.
Yeah, no assignments that are brought to us. It's a gradual change.
So, in terms of item 4, which is the review of the meeting there, approved later on. So the drafts have been approved for publish for audit and public inspection. Public inspection period is open. I'm sure, I don't anticipate results will have completed their work by November, but I'm sure they will come. I will pay for what they have done previously, and then once the sign and final council it. So, we've got. So we've got the AGS there as well, which is there's a specific item on that later on the agenda, though. There is, yeah. So we want to return to that then. Right, so if we then leave that so all those things. We move on to the internal audit and report 22/23.
So, morning everybody. The annual report relates to last financial year and was drafted by the previous head of internal audit. It presents a picture where overall the county council is performing well, particularly in governance risk and financial control. In relation to the area of internal control, which has been deemed as performing adequately, there are no specific concerns in relation to that. There are areas that could do with some improvement, but everything is performing well, and there are no specific concerns in relation to performance of our internal controls. I'm very happy to take any questions that anybody's got about the report, bearing in mind I'm not the author of the report, but I've had conversations with Lucy about it.
Thank you, Claire. Obviously, Lucy and Claire are meeting once again, but obviously, Claire as and then part of the so thank you.
Yeah, mentioned apprenticeship levy, a reasonable response on that. It's a big ask when you decide as a risk hospital performance. You know, I know local authorities embrace almost everything, but God, you know, don't give yourself that challenge, because I as one of those as a CCG member who tried to be assured about hospitals, gave up after 13 years. So, do you refer to the fact that maybe we can do more to contribute in an integrated care system context to influence the holding to account of hospitals? Because obviously there's an impact on local authorities through children's and adult social services of hospitals and acute services not performing well.
So these areas of low assurance came through the combined assurance work that was done earlier in last financial year. And it related to sort of the development around the integrated care work. So that was very much in its infancy at the time this was doing. This was being created and written. Now we're in a position where we've got much more assurance around that. We've got the base work sort of agreed and that is starting to be developed. So I think where we talk about risk, it's not necessarily deemed as a risk. It's deemed as an area where we have lower assurance than we would like to have had. We're not undertaking the responsibility for the hospitals.
Yeah.
That would be far too simple.
I think you put your point on a key thing. There's a big ask of all previously allegedly siloed working public authorities that you all play nicely together, and by playing nicely together, you will get 2+ product out of that engagement. It's the what did the Romans ever do for us question, really. What has the ICES done to improve the lot and experience of patients, residents, communities, etc.? I asked that question of somebody in an ICB the other day, and they said it's too early. There's a point at which you can't get away with that response. So, Chair, I wonder whether it would be too big an ask of Glenn Garrett and colleagues to give us a paper at some point on, is the ICS working for the county council in terms of being able to collaboratively work with partners to improve the lot of our community residents?
We just asked Andrew,
There is a
we have asked Glenn to visit us, and we close in September.
Yeah, so Glenn's coming to bring a paper and talk about the market pressures and strategic risks that were raised at the last meeting. There is a separate placeholder in the November meeting if you wanted to ask Glenn to come to talk about something else. Because that September meeting is at the moment focused on the marketplace.
Well, just my thought, it's a big player in the future strategy for community services and particularly health services. And of course, we know in terms of the wider determinants of health, not the NHS, it's jobs, it's lifestyle, it's housing, all sorts of other things. But if these ICESs are going to mean anything, they need to start demonstrating that by collaboratively working together, they make a difference.
I think there's quite a bit going on at the minute around hospital discharge as well. So there's been quite a lot.
Well, that's one of the most concrete things,
Yeah.
Not blocking beds in
Yes.
the queues is good.
So, and I mentioned earlier about the increasing reporting back to government for specific grants. So that's one of the areas where we're doing quite a bit of work.
Yeah, yes, there's bringing some money to assist with that, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's the interaction between the hospital and the social care
Yeah.
world that's kind of the key focus for us where there is overlap with our
And then
services.
this has been brought up at the Health and Wellbeing Integrated Care Partnership.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a multifaceted approach, isn't
Yeah.
it, Michelle? It's pulling all those things together, getting the assurances on that. But certainly we can ask Ben to attend again in November.
And I have to remind myself, Chair, we are not a service scrutiny committee.
No, we're
We
not.
are
We're
a
just
committee
looking
that
at
says,
assurances.
is there a mechanism for health and wellbeing board, et cetera, to hold to account those players in the integrated care system?
Basically, the consultation concluded, I think, in December from the Health and Wellbeing Board regarding these issues. Also, we've got the Health Scrutiny Committee layered on top as well. I don't know what your opinion on
Well, that's group surveys, I think those sort of things
that.
we are looking for the same sort of improvements coming from ICBs and ICS and those you are.
Yeah.
And what we've seen so far, we might worry of thinking whether that is actually going to happen.
Urging is the word.
It's very, we had a presentation about the integration of the dental pharmacy and optical eyes.
Yeah, they've been going down.
Not long ago, and the dental, I did raise the issue. I'm not totally sure how you can integrate a service that actually exists in the dental point of view. And it did seem to be that they were going to go around schools giving free toothbrushes away, which didn't seem to warrant a lot of improvement actually taking place in the fundamental issue that faces.
Going back to our committees, so we're taking a review of all of those issues. So it's pinning down what we need, the assurances we need to get from Glenn. Obviously, market supply is key because that affects financial resilience, affects the operation of areas and all kinds. Yeah, and the integrated care package board and all the other things, really important stuff. We're looking at a load of
Yeah, I think we need to make sure that it is.
multiple levels.
So I think that's my question, really. There are multiple holding to account.
Yeah, they are, and they're
Which
working.
would assure you that there is an attempt to try and conclude rather than amorphous areas.
But there's a whole consultation process going on for integrating, and it won't conclude until Christmas. And that's before we start doing it. But it may be a little early to look at the delivery of it, you know, yeah.
I think the answer that Andrew was giving is right, the right one. You know, it's too early.
Yeah.
But it's, as you say, it's becoming, it's becoming nearer and nearer times when things are meant to happen.
Yeah.
And so you can't use that excuse for anymore.
Obviously, you go through your combined insurance process where you don't actually need to ask like questions about this. And this obviously came up as last year's kind of process. So it's not.
Yeah, we generally meet and discuss that in February. It's definitely something I think we can bring up with Glenn as a shop there, so it's good. We have to discuss the targets. They see where we are. Then Andrew.
Party insurance, you mean?
No, just asking something else. We'll do the next discussion about market supply. Because then by then we may know a little bit more about.
Yeah.
Then may have a lot of minds and fires.
It's not going to be attached to this vision, it's in the partnership.
I'm sorry, I'm just.
Yes, actually.
Yeah.
Yes, actually, there was different time, Chair, so.
Yeah.
This is our index 2024.
Okay. No, what's
I
that?
said that one. I'm sure it's nothing to say.
Not to do that at all. Oh, yeah.
That was a good chat.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone, I don't know if it's. We should go all back to.
Through the chair, I think what Andrew brings up is really quite important
Yeah.
because there should be some measurables both financially and quality
Yeah.
of service. Because we don't need Lincolnshire to slip back much further health-wise, whether it's dentistry or whether it's hospitals. And what we don't want to be watching is the deck chairs and the finance moving around to deliver nothing. Because that's what the integrated care is about.
I said that we need to see how these processes pan out and we can get that 5 years. And then we can always bring that, certainly, you will have to combine the shirts and put to certainly have them to come back.
Question on
I think
that.
Yeah, far away.
It's to do with, I thought the report was very good and it shows fundamentally you're on top of things and there's not anything significant that you identified. And all hospitals will probably be a good thing to prioritize because I think that's something that's going to hospitals to get HS, something that's going to frustrate us for a long time to come. The question I've got is that we seem to be doing we seem to be doing a lot less external consulting work. Is that because we have to do the core work, or is that just so that we can make sure that we do better? Is that a long-term trend? Or that change if you've got more resources, for instance? Whether it's a management decision or whether it's more to do with resource capacity.
Is that in relation to the internal audit?
Well, it's providing the external audience to share with all what it is.
So there has been a need because of recruitment, we've been carrying quite a big 33% recruitment post through the majority of last year. We have had that reliance on that co-source option. And I think it's healthy to have an interaction with the co-source option. We're in discussions with SWAP at the moment to continue some of that co-sourcing, but hopefully not to the level that it's been done last year. Obviously, it depends on that recruitment campaign and the success of that recruitment.
So you might have found out you get the resources. Is that what you're saying?
That's the plan. That's my ambition. If I can get the resources, then we'll be back to a quality assured internal audit plan.
The key is that we don't want to dilute our internal audit. In what you mean?
I think that's the answer.
That's it is, and to make sure that we have that, you know, full delivery and we don't overstretch. So I think it's 1 week when we can, firstly, it's what we're doing, that's fine.
Chair, so it relates to page 293 and 294, well, sorry, 293, which is appendix 3, details of the overdue actions. Because on there are 3 actions that have been issued quite a while. One was March 19, August 2020, and October 21. And they've now got a 3 target dates on them. How confident you'll hit those target dates?
I think that these both, oh, sorry, all three, not both, all 3 of these are linked to the rollout of the new business world. So there was a conscious decision made at the end of last financial year to consider the impact from the changing processes and procedures linked with business world. The initial discussions and feedback I'm having around the implications of those is things aren't being addressed, dealt with through that implication. So a member of the internal audit team is seconded over into the business world implementation team, and she's given quite a reasonable level of assurance that these are going through. Obviously, it's changing to the demands that arise from the implementation of the system, management associated with that. But there is a level of confidence, I would say, in that these will be, I think they will be implemented. The level of confidence is around the actual dates.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And also, my next question relates to the key performance indicators on the next page, where the actual percentage of claim completion was 86%, which was 40% below your target. I know target 100% is always the key thing for internal and external audit, but they're not very good at that. But the timescales are a bit of a concern. The draft report issued within 10 days of completion was only 45%. Are we looking to improve that going forward?
We most certainly are. There's been a programme of training and development for the team so that they've had quite strong focus on planning their assignments, planning their report writing. We've got an increased oversight quality assurance programme in place, and with very set deadlines as to when we have an expectation that the draft reports will be finished. So I'm expecting it to increase significantly.
To roughly what percent? Are you going to lay down a percentage for us?
I'm not going to spoil the surprise, the report's coming in July.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, Chairman, I'd just like to pick up on the details of audits. I do have concern that the academy, my division, seems to have limited assurance. I was just seeking assurances that we're going to work to improve that.
The outcome of the limited assurance at that particular academy has been shared with the school's finance team as well as with the academy, and working with the school's finance team to make sure there's improvements. We'll be doing for it.
Thank you. I mean, obviously, with the academy, it's probably nothing to do with the member, but I obviously it has impact on local education facilities, which I do care.
It doesn't be as high profile as the county council, but we still make sure we follow up on it and make sure that we need to be information.
Thank you very much for that.
Any questions for Claire? We have the on the content of the report. The action is to take and review what the audit review plan. So can we move on to the council board report?
So good morning, today I'm presenting item 6 on the agenda, and that is the county board annual report, that's for 22-23. Really, this is charged with maintaining the assurance and the effectiveness of risk management, and that includes management of fraud risks. This report is intended to support the committee with the role and discharge their duties on this. Like Claire, I'm presenting the information that I haven't actually worked on myself. So the report has been collated using the statistics that were maintained by the Planning Board Investigations staff in corporate audit and risk, and it does provide us with backwards look at work that was delivered during 22-23. I'll take you through some of the highlights and headlines from the report. In terms of the UK fraud landscape, it's been quite a challenge to quantify the exact risk and exposure we have faced by local authorities. National estimates of fraud losses are not recent or not necessarily reliable, but nevertheless, we do know that public sector risks continue to grow. That's the line public sector risks of fraud. I think it'd be naive to think that local government will be any less affected than any other public body. So at Lincolnshire County Council, the fraud risk register was updated, and that was presented to Audit Committee in February 2023. And this acknowledges there is one high risk area. Cybercrime continues to be featured as a high risk area, and we have a number of medium risks, social care, around financial abuse, financial assessments areas, and overstating of user needs. We have procurement and contract management as a medium risk, tools and establishment payroll, and also potential for corruption. So those are risks that potentially we face, and we need to ensure that they are mitigated against. Worth noting, and I think this ties into the accounts that you discussed earlier, council tax risks are also noted. The council tax is administered by the districts, but because we work closely with the district council, we report on that, and that does have an impact on collection rates, and that impacts on the LCC funding strategies. So counter-fraud resource availability has been significantly restricted during 22-23. Team structure, and I'll draw your attention to page 5 on the report, shows resources at the start of 22-23, and you will note that 3 staff left during the year. Inevitably, less resource means less work to be delivered. We delivered 58% of the plan, and 34% of resources were diverted to support and activity to our district partners in Lincolnshire. Detailed breakdown of the days we've delivered is stated at Appendix A, and that's at page 309 in your packs. It's quite clear the team have worked hard to deliver what they can with the available resources, but there are some clear gaps in the planned preventative work. About 2/3 of our resources were used on investigations, which left relatively little for proactive work, and that's something when we're doing the plan in July we'll be to address. Although we did deliver less work, I think there are still some areas of comfort. Getting some lines of control effectively, so the control environment remains effective. Claire and I had quite a good discussion on this in terms of, well, where can we draw assurances from? We identified that several mandate calls were frustrated, that they were prevented, and staff, we have confidence that the staff continue to raise areas of concern. So that shows that management control are working, that picking up on the areas and referring them through investigation. So we're not complacent. I think there's further work to be done, but that concludes my report. I'm happy to take any questions.
I think the report shows that there's an awful lot of activity taking place in the very key areas. One area that is important, top flight, and that's prevention rather than investigation, etc. Which is stopping it happening in the first place, rather than investigating what has happened and what the outcome ought to be. And I do appreciate that you have to carry out your investigation. You need to investigate, so that's where resources have to go. But I would like to see more effort in the prevention side, and that will require resources. And I think you have got resource problems all the time. That being addressed, so that we can look at prevention as part of the package.
It is, and we'll bring the strategy to you at the next audit committee, but we're certainly looking towards a shift from the investigation towards the more proactive side of things, and a key strand in that is going back to recruitment. Again, Claire may wish to expand on this one, but she's building the staffing structures, and we are looking to go out and recruit further staff to counter-fraud capacity. We've recently appointed a principal to look at the county forward side of things, and also a senior auditor to look at county forward areas. Key priorities working around the national fraud initiative. So again, that's preventative work that will then going forward, but also raising awareness. That's something we're prioritising.
Let's see, we do take it seriously. I'm not totally sure that all organisations within the UK are taking fraud seriously. So, how successful are we taking cases that we've investigated? Is something wrong that ought to be taken action against? Actually, going through the rest of the system, doing it in court, and whatever sentence might come from it.
I think it's fair to say there are challenges with police enforcement. Council stance is always going to take care to answer towards fraud. So when we identify fraud, we refer it on to the appropriate action to be taken. We have a number of live cases that have been referred. In the year, some have been dropped by the police, granted, but we did have one major case that they have been pursuing. It's recently gone through magistrates and progressing to Crown Court, so it's positive that they are progressing with bigger cases. Where we have a lower level one, it doesn't mean to say disregard police doctor cases, we still take into action where possible for sections to address.
Which is the definition of a big case and a small case, how you go to court.
The police don't have really defined policy. Sometimes it depends on the resources at the time. Occasionally, if it's into multi-millions, the economic planning is showing interest in it, typically you'll get referred to it. It's a lower value, and you've got to be certainly tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands there. Showing an interest in that, but they will still allow CIB investigations for the lower level ones. It depends on the body of evidence, really.
If it's 999,999, what happens? They do.
They don't put a financial value on it.
That's a slightly thing, but you would fundamentally get away with it. The police don't choose not to take it forward because it's not big enough.
They don't get away with it, and certainly, for example, if it's an internal staff fraud, we would pursue that. If we recover from staff member, we have historically recovered from pension funds. We would certainly take disciplinary action.
Prevention is the issue there. Thank you.
That is one good thing about, I suppose you take to that.
It's not something that we've passed. I think it's an area to potentially explore police looking cases. Again, it's about the proof slightly lower proof.
It is a low proof, yeah, and also, a low proof might help them in the face of and everybody else looking at and the boards get more and more sophisticated. So the mandate for it, they get believable by the minute, and you've got to be more stuff, got to be more careful. That's what all that, it's very easy to be in a following.
Thanks very much, Chairman. I share your frustration with both, obviously, the police and their limited resource, and it's also the Crown Prosecution Service as well, because police sometimes get the blame, and unfortunately, it's the Prosecution Service that drops it. But where my question comes from, I'm not all directors, it's actually a bit of self-help. It's around process. How can we design process to eliminate as much of those hits as possible, and yet still make it actually workable? Are we doing anything on that?
I was just going to say about the bank mandate thing is quite interesting because it gets more sophisticated, and you're sure you'll hear about that shortly. And it is about being proactive and just trying to train to make sure if the process is there, it should work. I think if somebody's persistent, it's really difficult to try and negate them. But it is about that going back to the source of the information, going somewhere else, and quite a bit of training, I think, is okay over the last year, particularly. Previous report had quite a big near this with mandate and quite a lot of training. But I think the idea of designing processes, but it's getting the humans involved to make sure they follow that process. It's a challenge, I think. I'm sure you're a bit wrong. when we come to data later in the agenda.
I missed the session last week. I look forward to being trained now on how to do it next time round.
It's one of the leading things, unfortunately, isn't it? I've been trying to be one step ahead, but the technology makes it quite difficult. I noticed that to be there, so you've got the.
Yeah, and it's not just the things that engagement stuff. We've obviously referred to the fact that HMRC as well, and they're not interested.
No, no, no. So, but again, that comes down to resourcing and everything else. And having people locally, people with local later on stuff, who don't think that was all doing themselves. So those actually three months, like, they have to be and it's just getting, but no, I'll be interested to see if we see the civil penalty. If anyone wants to do that, I don't think I'm telling about it, or is it?
Again, it's a decision potentially have with our legal colleagues.
Yeah, no, I have to do that, yeah. If it's just good, just the
The justice system, I think the one that is being pursued is like 2 years after the issue referral is not really justice system.
yeah.
There's a cost to getting it wrong as well. So it's all about risk management.
Terry does the best job to say, and we've been quite good at the publicity end of it. So, yeah, we got a local crime that it's easy to try and identify someone and have that sort of determined. We've got something in India that trying to in the books, it makes it quite difficult. Trying to get into our system to someone or not. And so we have the version about that. There's the overall effectiveness of the arrangements to progress made about that. And the is the sure.
That's the standout point, and that's the significant increase in engagement across the whole team. Over the previous year, we've seen a 34% increase in every aspect of the IA work. In general, that's supporting complex tasks such as project support, effective information sharing, or security assurance activity. And it reflects a year-on-year trend in increased levels of engagement. And in part, that reflects the good work of the team to promote the benefits of engaging with IA, but also we're seeing a lot of delight from returning customers, I think, which proves that we have an effective service which supports colleagues rather than hinders them. Why is this important? I think a high level of engagement shows that we are being provided with more opportunities to identify information risk, equally to mitigate that information risk along with information owners. I think ultimately it improves confidence in the level of service being delivered. And as a council, we need to demonstrate that we're accountable for the information we're using on a daily basis, and that helps to do that. So overall, the increase in engagement has been very positive. There is a downside to that, of course, and higher levels of engagement mean resources are stretched, but we're managing that well within the team by focusing our efforts on the areas that need us the most. But simply, that's where the biggest risks are. I think just a couple of key points across each of the three strands of information assurance, start with data protection. And we had 6 complaints made to the Information Commissioner's office from members of the public about the council's method of processing data. Of these, the ICO upheld, partially upheld 1, and that was to do with a response within a statutory time scheme. We also had 24 data protection infringements reported to our internal data protection officer, and she upheld 6 of these. And for each of these, we were able to take actions to rectify the activity. That's a 16% increase from last year. However, I think the numbers are still low considering the amount of information we process on a daily, monthly, and annual basis. But I can give you assurances that any incident reported to the team is managed, reported, investigated thoroughly. I just want to point out also that we had an increase of 10% uptake on our information assurance training, which is always good, so we're sitting at 92%. And last year, the committee made reference to improving that. So that's very positive. Moving on to records management, we're in year 2 of a 4-year project to reduce our hard copy records. I'm pleased to report that overall risk continues to fall almost on a daily basis. The team have continued to make very good progress across all aspects of hard copies of records with energy and persistence, which is admirable, really. We're currently over 100,000 files now being identified, appraised, subject to far better governance, with nearly 30% of those records destroyed, so records that we shouldn't have been holding on to in the first place. I think importantly, we've also been flexible enough to respond to any requests for support. So very recently, the records management team went into the children's homes to respond to their requests to help them manage their records, and that was a very positive experience for colleagues. Towards the end of the year, we're turning our attention to the supply, and we're holding thousands of boxes of records off-site with the intention of reducing and rationalise all our holdings. Finally, moving on to information security, and you've already mentioned bank mandate fraud. Just a point on that, and you're absolutely correct. Traditionally, bank mandate frauds were fairly simple to spot, apart from a bad English, and they stood out a mile. They're becoming far more sophisticated, very difficult to spot, particularly using tools such as artificial intelligence. Within seconds, you can push out an email which looks exactly like the real thing. So reliance on humans to stop those is becoming more and more difficult. That's not to say we can't teach people to spot some of these issues, but they're certainly becoming more difficult. In general, no surprise to know that the cyber threat continues to increase. That's just the nature of a connected world, unfortunately. And the risk from ransomware and phishing in particular, we're seeing increases nationally, in fact internationally, regarding ransomware, but particularly within local authorities. As a result, IA continue to develop their IA training and awareness and their policies to make sure that our response remains relevant. We're also developing really strong information channels to make sure that we're up to date with the latest threats. We share that with technical colleagues to make sure our response remains relevant. Moving on to more general security incidents, so these are more like data breaches. Unfortunately, we've had a 13% increase in actual incidents where there has been either a data breach or some other security incident. That's now 297 for the previous year. Following similar trends, every year, human error seems to be able to cause these. The good news is that these incidents, although there's been an increase, there's been a 30% decrease in the number of incidents involving the more sensitive information. For the first time ever, we've not needed to report any of the incidents to the Information Commissioner's office because they've been managed so effectively and so well, bringing them below the reporting threshold. Again, I can give you assurances that any security incident reported to the team is recorded, managed, and investigated thoroughly. Overall, very, very busy year, very productive year, high level of engagement. Obviously, I'd say that was a very positive thing.
Very pleased to see the report that the paper records issue is being addressed. It's not a question that he's answering at the moment, but perhaps in the future you can let us know how much has had to be put onto electronic form as opposed to just burnt. Just to see, you know, how worthwhile the exercise is, you know, I'm just going to do all of, you know, whether this report records hidden away, less. The cyber issue is by something that it's always going to be there, and it's always going to be trying to keep track of the improvements that the community is putting into place. In terms of information and record keeping, I just wondered whether there's a similar issue brewing in terms of the electronic records that the council holds on various machines and various officers' machines, and whether there's similar thing brewing, you know, in the future where somebody's going to have to go through this and see what should be there and what shouldn't be there. What is the general policy about requiring officers to go through their machines and only store things on it, you know, that's important? Store it rather than every single email it has, you know, since 1952. But I know from my own machine, you know, it's still there. It's finding time to do it and finding the incentive to go and do it.
Yeah, just taking the first point on, you know, learning records, we encouraging people to put them we are. And it's an important point because taking the opportunity when we engage with certain areas, to point out that you don't need multiple copies of the same document in different formats, and we're offering good practice and good guidance to help them improve that. Moving on to the wider point, yes is the answer. And as you can imagine, it's really easy to create information electronically. It's more difficult to manage it effectively. And records management, regardless of the format of information, the same principles apply. So we collect it, we use it, we retain it, and we destroy it. Applying those principles to electronic information is very challenging because of the nature of the systems. Fortunately, because of the hard copy project, it's released a resource to allow us to then focus on the exact issue you described. So we're looking at all our key systems to understand whether they are retaining information. If they're not, why not? What can we do to improve it? Looking to see if our retention periods are being applied effectively across systems. So, for example, in Office 365, you're defining retention, which can be turned on automatically. So then you don't have to go back through emails and think, do I need to keep this? At the 6-year point, they will be gone unless you keep them also. So we're doing a lot of work to look at the electronic side of things. It's as significant, I would say, as hard copy records, and that's just because it's so easy to create and collect information.
Yes, we might not be in the same situation, you know, in 10 years' time, you know, there's a mountain of electronic data that we have to go through and sift, because we're putting systems in place that we should deal with that on an ongoing basis.
Absolutely. I think historically we haven't been good at records management. Records management is now part of the whole conversation. The commissioning new systems as part of contracts, part of the assurance process. So we are doing it better. It's just there's an awful lot of historic things to go back and look at.
Do we have our own commercial credit contractors, or do we, I mean, on a routine basis, obviously not something that we do in-house?
Well, we have two options. We have cost-cut shredders in buildings, so people can do it themselves. I believe facilities have a contract with an off-site provider who collect from the blue bins and take the bins and shred it securely. There's plenty of options for staff and colleagues to make sure we get the information.
Do you have to have any certification for that? I don't know from professional body, they need to see certificates there and then you've done it.
So yes and no. So records management teams trying very sensitive records, they will log it, but it's not possible to certify individual records being destroyed in an office building, for example, because of the blue bins. People are essentially emptying things in there. It's very difficult to then go through them all. So it depends on who's destroying it and what's being destroyed.
Obviously, if you had children's services records, interventions and things like that, they'd be helpful. Really, with something like that would be a secure process to.
Regardless of the record, I encourage a secure destruction process because sometimes mistakes are made. And the records management project, when they're destroying children's records and making a note of what's being destroyed, and achieving
there could be some historic, you just don't know.
Absolutely.
Historic things could be, you need to know what you've got and what you haven't. You need, because data protection makes you not told what you don't need, and you can't always determine that at the determine the time.
People love to hold, unfortunately. And we encourage people, if it's not needed anymore for a legal obligation or business need, get rid of it.
Don't need it. And it's quite alarming to see the amount of tax without these figures that you've got on page.
Yeah, machine wheels are on 62,000, slightly less than last year, but still a
It's
significant.
still alarming amount.
It is. Each one designed to cause us harm or steal data, so you
Yeah.
can imagine it's a.
Yeah, but the good thing is that we're flooring vast majority of things. Any further questions for David? Thank you, David, very much. Very interesting. The recommendation. So, for the report, finding further information action, I will approve the. Um, Thank you. Eight is the new project.
Back to me.
Back to Claire.
So this is the draft annual governance statement. I'm literally got this was draft by me, so this is mine. Lucy and I worked together on having conversations about governance across the organisation, and it covers a significant amount of governance aspects for us. It is in draft form. It will be updated and brought back to the committee in September when the latest performance figures are available and all the reports have been included in there. But other than that, there should be minimal changes to it, and we'll be back in September. Overall, I'm pleased to report it is a positive picture of governance across the organisation, and there should be a reasonable level of assurance being able to take from this, because there is really good work going on, and it's very well known across the organisation. There are two areas that have been identified for further improvement. One is more explicitly linking the use of resources with the delivery of the corporate plan, so that we can increase transparency and make it clear where we are utilising the spending of public funds. And further work to continue the work that started in relation to the One Council, so that we are actively sharing the expertise that's very clearly there across different directorates within the organisation, and having a reduction in some of the isolation work that we see, so that we are genuinely spreading that skill, knowledge and expertise that we see. And again, we think that will help with not only increasing the use of resources that we've got, but also starting to support that transparency as well. So I am very happy to answer any questions anybody may have about the governance.
In terms of the self-assessment of the executive directors, for the delivery within their areas of responsibility, is that going to be a standard tick box sort of exercise, or is there going to be some guidance issued? Just trying to work out how meaningful it's going to be.
So the process that was followed this time was the one that was inherited, which was specific questions as headlines, conversation starters with individuals, and then honing in on the information that they share with us, and then triangulating that back to the combined assurance work that was delivered earlier in the year. And going forward, I am planning to review that process, but I wouldn't want to take away the standard questioning that then is further investigated in relation to the conversations that come back. I think there'll be a little bit more preparation time for individuals for them to be able to research their questions more at the time we have the conversations. It's a little more meaningful to it, and also bring in some of the assurance work that's been done either by external parties or by the organisation into those conversations.
Or just the independent side of things. Thank you.
Very important of being those schemes, financial resilience, and maybe she's stuck in about the council report from
the AGS should be the no surprises, but it should be strengthened. It should be what we had before. In terms of we're looking at these themes and it would have been picked up from grant review as well. Full consistent approach to look where we need to be. Some might have a few tweaks. Thank you so much for that.
So the work programme, as you know, sets out the forward plan for the county for the coming year. I think it's probably fair to say it may be subject to change with having a new internal audit, new head of internal audit, and I'm looking at some of the templates for the reports and what the information they contain, what they look like for you. So I think it's fair to say that we'll keep a close eye on that and obviously any information to you that may change. There's already been a couple of changes, so the monitoring officer's report has been postponed until the July meeting, so that will come to meeting in July. And the addition of the exec director for adults will come to next.
After the work we did, I think I'm going to be watching from the last few bits. And we have a joint working group with yeah. We're all happy with the work programmes. Thank you very much for attending. We've got all the views of time. Okay, we'll do a detailed review as well. Put on our back to Ian 5, Ian 1 be doing a bit better.